who is going to give a talk on role of architecture education in Makli, a very important topic. So please welcome Zain Mustafa.
With due thanks to the Sindh Culture Department, Archaeology and Antiquities Departments, Endowment Fund Trust, Honorable Sardar Ali Shah Sahab, Manzoor Kanasro Sahab, my greatest mentor in this field, Hamid Akhund Sahab, sitting right here in front of me, and their teams that I've had the pleasure of working with for several years now. This conference is a small dream come true for me. When I discovered Makli for myself 7 years ago, there was very little happening here. Most of those reasons you've already been introduced to in the previous presentations this morning. What dawned on me is that how come we have 80 fantastic, precious, fragile, extremely scented monuments in Makli, and very few of our architecture departments, our architecture students, engage with them. I started thinking about what that engagement could mean, not only in terms of reflection for the landscape of architecture in terms of contemporary design, but also why it is that the departments don't engage with the architecture students. There's 150 students attending this conference today. I am really proud to say that 120 of those students are from 4 of our Karachi architecture departments. So thank you to department heads of Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture, NED, Sir Syed University of Technology, and Dawood University. It is fantastic that half of this room today is occupied by architecture students. This is something that we should all be proud of. Although the government of Sindh and its relevant departments may be the custodians of these precious monuments of our history, we must all take ownership of them. Conferences of this nature are not easy to organize and draw to them the best in prominent scholars. They are libraries of information, these people, living libraries. Information that we can use, we should use, not only as inspiration to build on, but also as potential resources to reflect in our professional and academic curriculum. We are short of time, so this is not going to be elaborate, but it's the perfect segue into a 2-day conference that's rich in academic references, histories, conservation techniques, technologies for Makli. The question I pose to all of us, scholars, professionals, and academics and students, what is the role of architecture, what is the role that the architecture of Makli plays in contemporary architecture studios? This is a question that I would like to raise not only to the floor. We have Walid Zaid, Shayan Rajani in the floor, who I'd like to throw this question out to. Of course, the legendary Qasim Ali Qasim Sahab, who I've seen from day one over here, who's been curator at large for all our various assets. And on stage with me, Rabela Junejo, who's been by my side in all of my discoveries of Makli from 2011. Rabela, you're a professor at NED. You teach history, you teach architecture. Do you think that Makli's architecture has a relevance and should be brought into the architecture studios?
I think it does, and it's not just because I'm researching at Makli that I'm saying that, but there's a lot that I learned during my research that I was unaware of in terms of the local heritage, because it does not really make into the textbooks, and because these textbooks kind of cover. So if you want to know about India or you want to know about the subcontinent, all you get to know about is the Mughal monuments. But when you venture into the local sites, especially Sindh, that unfortunately was, or fortunately, was the periphery for the central Delhi, it doesn't really make it into the textbook. But you come on the site, you visit the site, you look at the monuments, and you understand so much about a 14th century or a 15th century heritage that was, or architectural heritage that is here. So these things need to come to the studio and we need to do documentation and all through the students, and we need to start celebrating our own monuments, because they're very rich in
Stories.
rich with stories, but not just stories. I mean, if I just talk about the tomb of Jam Nizamuddin, we look at an arcuated structure, but it's basically built on a tributed system of construction. So how do you and where do you, and if you do not investigate it, you're not going to know about it. But why was something that was supposed to look like an arcuated, crystallized dome square chamber uses something that is not inherently that? So these are the kind of questions architecture students need to be asking. Why were they building that? What were the reasons behind it, and how were they building it, I think, more precisely. So if you want an arch, it's not necessarily that you can, or the expertise of the masons are with the making these perfect arches, but you can achieve it through different means as well. And I think that is what our students need to know as well, because 21st century we're still technologically lagging behind. So how do we achieve a certain thing in architecture by using something that is not an available expertise? I think that's one thing that Makli taught us.
So Rubaila very beautifully pointed out the craftsmanship of construction. It's important for us, I think, as students, as architects, to gain knowledge from the scholars that are here today and tomorrow, and ask them these questions of why were these buildings built the way they were, what was relevant at that point in time, how is that appropriate to the context today, and try and actually reflect and bring back the spirit of what is our original culture, our own identity, into contemporary architecture, which right now, as we all know, looks like a very sort of B-grade copy-paste of Western 1940s modernism. Dr. Saab, if I may direct the next question towards you, हमारी कल थोड़ी सी बात हो रही थी इस पे. Do you think that it's important for architecture students to learn more about Makli, about its monuments? Is there a connection that should be made between departments of archaeology and architecture design studios?
We don't need kind of a workshop or anything, but I think the whole workshop is there. Right, Makli Hill itself is a veritable school of architecture. The point, you see, actually that we, the students usually do not, actually when they qualify, they work for they have their clients, and the clients do not want these kind of fancy things you see in there. So they don't produce anything. So actually their work is not actually appreciated. That's what I feel. Not talking to the architects or something, as I look at it, it is just a very superficial. Like when there's one architect in Lahore, you know, it will just do the facade, or and the rest of it will be all, you see, all inside will be different. So the motifs, the style, everything is available, not only at Makli, but many other monuments. One can borrow very judiciously and make use of it. And if we try to do it, then it means we are reviving and sustaining the art, you see, which is represented by those monuments also. It's very important. I mean, why those things we don't get artists? You see artisans and people who can reproduce things like, you know, Peter Dora work in marble. There's no one available in Pakistan. One has to import from India, somebody, I know some time ago. The point is that as long as you see there's an interest of study and also utilizing, if not copying, but judiciously, you see, incorporating that style, decorative styles in the modern architecture. And I think, you see, so this is a, that you can, you see, maintain and sustain that. This is what I think. You see, is the architects work for the clients, and clients don't want these kind of things. So that's the reason they don't pay much attention to the traditional architecture and architectural style. Only few people will care for it, and that's what I have noticed. I mean, without, you know, very frankly speaking, I don't know.
Dr. Saab, thank you. I think the clients are to blame for sure, but it is our responsibility as architects and architecture students and architectural curriculum, if we start reflecting our knowledge of our own identity, our arts and craftsmanship of building like we have in Makli, then it will start informing the clients as well, and maybe inch by inch they will also change their minds. The same as this is the first time in a conference that's closed on archaeology that They have to study concepts of space, of perception, of moments of history, of memory. All architecture programs go through that, so it is relevant. People like me do bring it into our curriculum when we get the opportunity to, for sure. And the students who are sitting here who've been taught by me, that will resonate to them. But we're out of time. I know I brought Shayan on here. The conference has been running late. I've just been left a note from Zulfikar saying, we're time up. Shayan, I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Rabila. And I think that if the students have access to any of the scholars in the next 2 days, please make notes, stay in touch with them, and we can pick up this conversation within the university campuses after the conference is over with me directly. Thank you very much.
Now we have a second speaker, Dr. Rafiq Mughal, who will speak on cultural landscape of Makli based on survey of ancient settlement sites in Lower Sindh.
I was supposed to give a keynote address, which went off because they ran short of time. And I think today they just, it was whispered in my ears, just do in 15 minutes. All right, I'll try to do it, as you see. But there was so much to say, so much to comment, and also to show. But I have picked a few maps which are based on the publications by H.T. Lambrick on Sindh, and also M.H. Pamar, who was not an archaeologist or architect or a geographer. He was an irrigation engineer, but he had great love for the heritage of Sindh. He produced, dictionary, of Sindh, which is full of many very useful maps, and also a chronology of the events which took place in Sindh. So it's a good resource, and I picked some maps. At least one map is from the old publications of Reveries and others who wrote on Mehran of Sindh and its tributaries, which are not available. Probably you will get it in the reprints. So with this introductory remarks, I like to say that this paper, the subject I chose because nothing has so far been said on the cultural landscape based on the settlements, sites which were discovered way back in 1972. And then the surveys actually did not continue except in the upper part of Sindh and central Sindh by my colleagues and by the University of Shah Abdul Latif University, Khairpur. The point is the information which we gathered in Lower Sindh was intriguing in many ways because it is related very much to Makli and also the Makli, the landscape, the countryside on east and south of Makli. So it is a story of the river changes. I try to illustrate with certain series of maps. Now, the usual map you see, the publication in the archaeological map, we find that we have heritage sites which were recorded by N.G. Majumdar and which were published also by him and also Lambrick, and it is a part of many publications. What you are looking at is the concentration of sites of all periods, mostly what they call proto-historic or historic. You see all along the Kirthar mountains, on the Piedmont plain, and also towards the Indus River. Across the river, you don't find any sites except few. And especially when you come to Karachi, on the further south of it, then you find actually on the east of Theta, there's no site at all, mentioned or published in those reports. So that's the background, that's the bias, or you may call it. You see, the information was already limited. It wasn't very complete. Now, I want to take you back to the map which was published in 1972 of the surveys which were done by me, by my colleagues, and by Dr. Sharif. And all that information was combined into a map, and the periodization and the age of the settlements were determined by the ceramics and some other materials which were found on the surface. No site was excavated at all. So we have, all what we have is this was collection and the size of the settlements, how big or small they were. And there are, so these dots actually were utilized. We can look at the western side all along. This Thatta is, and the Makli is very close to it, close to the river, on the Indus on that side. Power utilized this map, and you see added, you see, and then there's few more sites. But what we notice is that above a certain line, there is a stop. The settlements do not go down further south. If we try to highlight the sites according to the period, it's very interesting. You know, we have, you see, near Gujo, the sites which are marked with red or the orange color, my favorite. So this is all prehistoric site or proto-historic site or Neolithic site. So we have just few of those. The rest of it are all of what we call medieval sites. So the medieval means about comes to period of 8th to 18th century. There are about 104 sites which are discussed in this. So the location itself will show that there are forts which are marked with green, and also the you see, which are above a certain limit, they do not go down, you see. And the prehistoric sites also stop. The last one is Kot Kuri on the southeast of it. The rest of it's all what we call medieval, 8th to 18th century. Now, if we look at the behavior of the Indus, the river, in relation to Makli, you see, we see this Makli little dot on the right over there. You see further black on the map on the right scene. That's Makli Hill. And these are the maps which were actually showing the changing river courses in the Paleolithic, in the prehistoric times. And then we get the map which was reconstructed, Alexander 326 BC, at which we see the shoreline is not further down, only it is very close to Makli. And also Bambhor is located right on the shoreline. The rest of the delta is a later addition. Now, when we look at this in the 9th century, we find this bifurcation. You see the actual, you see into different two channels. Shoreline is receded. You see further expanded over, you see in different time of time. And then we get the 15th, 14th century, 14th century when Muhammad bin Tughlaq came to this part and traveled over there. And there were maps, you see, prepared, and which are, you shows, you see the Thatta, which is in green, shown over there, which is the Makli on that side, and the shoreline, and the river actually bifurcated into, you see, there are three branches of it. The present course is shown in blue in all the maps. So what we look at is, see the changing river courses and the channels, which were, you see, close to Thatta and the further, see, east of it. If we go further, and we get a kind of, you know, something which is very intriguing. In 16th century, certain changes took place, and then in the between 15th and 17th century, 3 river channels, you see, were created. The first, in the red one, which you are looking at, that is, you see, the actual river course, and then going westward into, you see, towards Bambhor. Bambhor is on the, you see, on the close, very on it. It was connected with the sea. And then another line which goes further down and which shows it is a 1546. That means this and the other one, there are 3 different changes took place within 200 years. What was that change? The southern Indus Valley, Sindh, has been unstable seismically. There had been number of earthquakes which have been recorded in history. On the right side, you see the epicenters of those earthquakes. Even Mansoura was affected in 1926, as mentioned. Date is mentioned, Mansoura. This is the whole of the lower Indus. That was the further down on the southeast of it. You see, there was an upheaval. There was an uplift across the Indus Channel, which is called Allah Band, that created by Allah, God. So that was the band which is shown in this orange red line. And then there were depressions which were created, you see, on two sides. You see, and there was a mass destruction of settlements. So already there were few settlements. Whatever was there, so that was destroyed, and people moved upward. And that's one of the reasons why we don't find, you see, the settlements south of Thatta. This is what we get, the map which is shown. I'll go quickly. I have been given this yet again. I think I'm out of time. And what we are looking at is, you see, the conclusion is that it was not possible to have these sites, you see, located further down south and southeast of it, you see, in the earlier period. That's the reason we get sites of the later period. Now, Monique Gavan, she explored this delta area, and she discovered pottery belonging to Ming, Chinese pottery, what's called the blue pottery, which is called the Ming dynasty of 13th, 14th century, which is even of later time. So it means certain areas at that time were accessible, and southern Sindh through the sea route, and also the channels with various, you see, channels which were created at the time. But we do not get that kind of, you see, material further north. Bambor was lost, we think we destroyed in the 12th century. That is recorded. And then you see the rest of the material is of later time. Thank you very much for the time. I just wanted to bring to your notice the settlements, why they were there, why certain periods are concentrated, why it was not possible to inhabit the southern part of the Indus Valley south of Thatta and Makli. Most of these sites are of the early period. As you see, they are the northwest of it, you see, because that was the stable area. Even Makli is an Eocene rock, which is about several million years ago. Thank you very much.
And also connecting it with nearby settlement sites. Now we have next speaker, Dr. Muhammad Mehdi, who is going to talk about the anthropological study of relationship between Iran and Sindh based on most frequent themes of Makli graveyard.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Eminent scholars, excellencies, friends. Iran and the historical Sindh, based on the existing resources, have long had political, commercial, and cultural ties. This intersection continued not only in history, but also in the cultural and cultural affinity between peoples living in the two territories. Understanding of cultural elements among the peoples of these two ancient lands and finding their commonalities in the cultural development of both lands is essential. This paper tries to focus on one of these common cultural aspects by focusing on the most frequent themes of Makli graveyard. The research method applied in this paper is based on library documents and field research, and it has been attempted to find a logical answer by analyzing carefully the main questions of this research. The result of this research is the reestablishment of one of the roots of commonality among the peoples of the two lands. Questions. What is the vast cultural and deep artistic interaction between Iran and Sindh?